3 days now, the party has been trapped within the wizard's tower. Navigating through traps, monsters, and other horrors contained within, they find themselves in a long, dusty corridor. As they progress deeper into the darkness, torches and lanterns are lit to provide what little light they can. The corridor starts to change. The walls are smooth and the dust has gone. Party magic user turns to the thief. Something nefarious is afoot here. At the front of the party, the human fighter strides ahead, long sword drawn, torch held high in his left hand. As he peers into the darkness, a slow moving silhouette appears. Skeletal figure, seemingly floating in midair. He turns to the cleric. Time for you to do your business, mate. Turn this godforsaken creature back. The cleric steps forward, eyeing the lifeless skeleton as it floats towards him, a sense of unease washing over him. Something's different about this. He holds his holy symbol high, makes a quick prayer to the Morning Lord. Be gone back to the grave, foul creature! A bright light emanates ever so quickly from the outstretched arm and holy symbol. Dissipates. The skeletal figure does not react and continues to glide forward. Again, the cleric tries. Party starts to sweat with fear. The human fighter turns to the rest of the party. Wizard, ready yourself. As the party prepares for combat, the cleric once again tries to turn the undead, to no avail. And before they can react, a greasy pseudopod shoots out and attaches itself to the cleric's outstretched arm. It starts to burn, and he quickly realizes that he can't move his left arm at all. Before he knows it, he's engulfed by an amorphous being completely filling the corridor. His skin starts to tingle as the acidic nature of this creature starts to take hold. The group hear a gargle scream coming from within this creature. They watch in horror as their fellow party member is slowly and painfully dissolved inside of a gelatinous cube. So, the gelatinous cube. One of, if not my favourite monsters in the entirety of Dungeons and Dragons and basic fantasy. It's a classic dungeon corridor filling, consuming monster that to everyone who's played D&D before is an iconic part of the game. To those newer, or when you're trying to explain it to people not as familiar, it comes off as so wacky and hilarious. It normally piques their interest too. I know it did mine when I was first getting into the game. The stats, as per basic fantasy role-playing, it's got an armor class of 12, so pretty easy to hit, but it's got 4 hit dice, so it is a chunky boy. It's only got 1 attack, but this attack is deadly. Does 2d4 damage and paralysis. It can only move 20 feet per round, but if you say got a heavily encumbered fighter in the front ranks with heavy armor on, that can come up on them pretty quick. And I always play them with the ability to basically engulf as they go, so they can move over. They don't have to fire out the pseudopod, they can move over characters and just engulf them within. The save as a fighter level 2, so not that good on the saves. Has a morale of 12, it's never going to run away. And probably the most important part, they're nearly completely transparent. Normally they're spotted with whatever they've last consumed inside it. Any organic material will completely be dissolved as it consumes it within. Metallic stuff or magical items, anything that's been treated with inorganic material normally will be eerily floating down the corridor. To an untrained eye, if you've got new party members that haven't encountered this creature before, it can be in equal parts hilarious and frightening to encounter. As I described before, it's a corridor filler, so they're normally encountered 10 feet by 10 feet by 10 feet, a large cube basically, as the name would suggest, that fills your classic 10-foot dungeon corridors. The paralysation isn't like a ghoul's touch or anything like that, so elves are affected in exactly the same way, and it will affect creatures for 2d4 turns, not rounds. If you get engulfed by this and you're anything but high levels, if your party can't figure out a way to get them out of there, they are dead. I love this monster. I've used it so many times. A lot of my players from my home game back in the day will know a lot of encounters with this monster. A story that sticks out in my mind, and apologies to my little brother if you are ever listening to this, but I have to tell it because it is iconic within my gaming group. We were playing the 4th edition adventure, The Cairn of the Winter King. We were pretty much all new players. I'd played D&D before. It was one of my first times DMing. We were doing an extended campaign through the Nentia Vale. My little brother was playing a half-elf rogue. I can't remember his name for the life of me, but anyway, that's not important. He must have been, my brother at the time would have been maybe 16 or 17. He's late 20s now, so this is going back a few years. The party was doing really well, either negotiating through, figuring out traps, getting around monsters, dealing with all the random encounters, and I was kind of struggling to find a way to challenge them. I looked at the random encounters table and thought, what the heck is this? A gelatinous cube. So I looked it up and I thought this is going to be perfect. They were getting a bit too overconfident. They were sending my brother's rogue out to scout for everything, and I thought it was time to throw something into the mix that would really challenge them. Now, obviously, 4th edition, very different to basic fantasy, but whatever edition you're playing, I implore you to include this monster, because what happened next was just absolutely a classic scenario that happens, I'm sure, at a lot of newbie gaming tables. The rogue was scouting out 20 to 30 feet ahead of the rest of the party as they were navigating the dungeon, and I played it very similar to the little vignette I gave you at the start. He reported that a floating skeleton was coming to the door, and the rest of the party was, well, one skeleton, but deal with it. My little brother obliged them, went in for an attack. This turned out to be the wrong thing to do. A pseudopod came out, grabbed his character, engulfed him within the body of the creature, and slowly started to dissolve his hit points away. Now, my brother had grown very fond of his half-elf rogue. He couldn't quite deal with what was happening with him, and it didn't help that there was a group of some 7 to 8, the rest of us was. It was a big gaming table at the time. I think there was 9 of us in total, all age. My little brother was the youngest at 16, 17. The rest of us were in our 20s. My dad played in that game as well. He must have been in his 40s at the time. And as he implored the rest of the party to drag his character out of there, he wasn't too impressed with their answer as to, hell no, I'm not going near that thing, as the shape of the creature decided to start revealing itself and they could see exactly what was going on. Long story short, they did manage to get him out in the end. After he'd gone past the bloodied point, he was on minimal hit points left. They exchanged who was inside the actual creature at one point. I think my other friend's paladin was inside him at one point. A battle ensued. They managed to defeat the creature, but it really changed the tone for the rest of the adventure as to, right, this is how we're going to approach things from now on. And I really enjoyed it as a DM running it for them, because this wasn't me just sticking a gotcha in there like some save or die trap or something like that. I created a fair challenge for a large group that kind of evened the playing field a bit. The party size was probably maybe a little bit too big for that adventure, but they were of the appropriate level, so the encounters inside, and me being a new DM at the time, they were running over things with pretty much no issue. So yeah, that was my story on how I first came about this monster and how I use it at my table. There are many things that you can do with these creatures. If you're running it against a newer group, I think the classic corridor setting is absolutely ideal to introduce it, and it will make your party be much more wary at the time. I still have some of my regular players on my basic fantasy game ask, are the corridors clean here? A lot of the time, and it's quite hilarious to say yes sometimes when there's no cube down there. It really sets them on edge. There's more ingenious ways that you can use this creature also. These aren't my original ideas, it's what I've read over the years. At the bottom of the pit trap, have a gelatinous cube. One that I really want to try someday is some sort of tripwire system where if they activate the tripwire, a gelatinous cube falls from a hidden compartment in the ceiling. And you could really customize this monster. You could have a small version that takes up maybe a narrow tunnel system that's clearing it out. You can have a bigger version that completely fills an entire room but is completely invisible. So they open a door and there's all this treasure just floating in midair. And for any party member that's intrigued enough to go inside, it gets sucked into the gelatinous cube. Something like that would either very badly or very well, considering what viewpoint you want to take on it. I always consider a lot of the oozes to be not of natural creation either. I imagine some mad wizard concocting these horrible rituals and pulling mad ideas from tomes that he's looted from long forgotten tombs on how to create these creatures, and then setting them about his tower, his dungeon, as some sort of never tiring guard that will always do its work. No morality to it, no ever questioning the master's reason for needing it. I always have them containing treasure of some sort. I think it's a very challenging monster to defeat considering the levels that you normally throw this at the party, so I do put a substantial amount of treasure inside it, and it kind of makes sense within that dungeon ecology. If it does pick up any dead adventurers, any dead monsters, that it would take that treasure from them and have it contained within. For me, I've got to admit, it's in my top 10 favourite D&D monsters ever created. If you would have asked me as someone brand new to the hobby, what are your top 10 favourite monsters? Have a look through this monster manual. You know nothing about the rules. You're always going to pick the things that stand out to the artwork and stuff like that, I think. Or maybe if they've got a good blurb written up. Generally, no one's going to pick the weird 10-foot cube that floats down the corridor, but give it a chance, use it in your games, and it will massively impress you. And for those players that have experienced it coming towards them, I bet it was a really memorable experience for you guys as well, and that's why it shot into my top 10 favourite monsters. If you play this monster in your campaigns, and if you play it right, as it should be, with surprise, with a real challenge for the party, it will be one of the most memorable parts of those low levels. I can assure you of that. I think people can comment to this as just how great this monster is to use. Yeah, it's in my top 10 favourite monsters ever. I'm going to continue using it in my adventures because more people need to use it. Oozes are a great enemy. There's no worry about morality, they don't have babies or anything like that. This is a mindless killer monster that needs to be put down, either to get your party members back with the group or to pull the treasure that's contained within. So my question for you guys is, what is your favourite ooze? Don't forget to comment, like the video if you did like it, leave me a comment about where I can improve on my next deep dives into monsters, and if you like the content going forward, please subscribe, share it with your friends, and I will see you guys in the next one.